principal of a school says the N word, says the F word, not that one, the other one, and a bunch of other stuff. Let's put up his picture. This is one insane story of implicit bias. The Enosburg Falls High School principal has been placed on leave. That's the principal right there. Letters to the school community say that he used offensive language over the intercom system during Friday morning's announcement. Principal Joseph Dornerum apologized in his letter to families and faculty, saying it was a terrible and inexcusable mistake. He apparently repeated racist and homophobic language that had allegedly been used by fans at a basketball game a couple of days later. Now, there's some nuance here, some things I have to point out. Number one, the local news media, they did not initially report on what he actually said. They had the recording, they chose not to report on what he actually said. So you have this sanitizing of the news here, all right? We understand if they don't want to go full on the word and they section some of the word out, but they need to let you know what he said. Well, local news outlets decided not to do that. But in my research, I did find a local entity who did provide a transcript of what was said, okay? The principal can be heard clearly saying offensive language over the intercom system. Now remember, this is to the entire student body. Students are using words like the N word, he says it out. F word, homophobic term. D, freak, and another term for those with disabilities. That's what the principal said over the loudspeaker. So he used a racial slur, he used 2 homophobic slurs, and an offensive word for people with intellectual disabilities. That's what he did. He did it on the loudspeaker, all right? The principal says his intention was to teach kids what kinds of words should not be used, but acknowledged in a quote by saying, just by using those words, I perpetrated the harm I was trying to prevent. Now, let me stop on this point. I believe racism exists on a spectrum. This I would classify as implicit racism or implicit bias. I don't think this principal was as aware as he should have been. Now, there is a point in your professional career, especially when you work with children, you should know better. I don't think he did. Nor do I think he sought the opportunity to know better, nor did he inquire with other communities before doing this. So that's his fault, and he deserves a penalty here. But there is a background to this that must be noted. He was responding to a game where students were using bigoted, racist, and homophobic language. He did not like it. He did not want to see it happen from his students. And so he got on the loudspeaker and said, this is what I heard was said at that game, and he was not happy about it, okay? That's a distinction. It may not make a difference for some, but it's an important distinction in my opinion. Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union Superintendent Lynn Coder writes in her separate email to the community that she is disappointed, and I can see why. She says this is a reminder of the work that needs to be done to address racism and unconscious bias. That's correct. She also says the principal will remain on administrative leave while officials investigate. Students and staff will be interviewed in the coming days to determine the specifics of the matter and the impact on our students and the statements it had, all right? That's good for them. They are at least listening to the student body. During Tuesday night's JV girls basketball game between Enosburg and Middlebury, a Middlebury player told the EFHS athletic director about racist comments from the stands. The entire school section was asked to leave the game. That's a proper response. In a letter sent to parents, the high school official said they have every reason to believe racial slurs were said. The school says they are looking into who the perpetrators were and they would like anyone with knowledge to come forward. In Friday's letter, which was addressed to the school students, staff, and community members, the principal said he was so sorry for any harm that are caused by using highly charged, insensitive, and inflammatory language. Part of the quote said this: "In my message, I intended to communicate to the entire EFMHS community that I want us all to join together to create a school-wide environment that is safe, tolerant, welcoming, creative, and dynamic for all people. Language that is dehumanizing, hurtful, marginalizing, or alienates anyone will not be tolerated." This is, to me, this is what I call a teachable moment. This is a teachable moment for everybody involved. This moment is on the back, obviously, of the principal, but remember the genesis of this. Do not lose focus on where this started. This started because students in this principal's school were noted to be racist and used racial, homophobic, and bigoted slurs at an official high school game. I think this principal was upset. I think this principal is misguided. I think this principal needs to understand that he himself has implicit bias in him. And here's why, because I know some of you would say, no, he was trying to do the right thing. That does not immune him to the implicit bias that's inside of him. Here's why. Did he go on the loudspeaker at any point in his career and say, I heard you all was saying the F word? Or SHI, you know what? Right? He didn't do that. He didn't go there and say those words. He said the other words because he did not see, in my opinion, how his own bias is involved in his attempt at a remedy. Ms. Dahl, how do you see this?
This to me seemed like a great example. I think the Republicans got all up in arms when there was training, recommended for employees, racial training. And this to me was a really good example of somebody, like you said, I think, it's Valentine's Day, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. His heart maybe was in the right place. He clearly did not know though how to handle the situation. When you are in a position of power as he is, you have to know how to handle a situation like this, especially in this day and age where people are emboldened to be really racist at a game. And this is sad. This is where we live in these days. So he needed to have some sort of training before he handled this. And maybe now he will. Now that he did this, and then the school district needs to come up with an initiative. We've talked about this before. They have it's a cultural issue they have there. I've seen schools do things like that, have initiatives, required reading that handles these, opens children's minds up to other people and races and cultures. There's so many things schools can do if they want to do it. And hopefully this principal really realizes how much help he needs, which means his students even need more help.
That's right, and he has to not think that he's the guy that can fix it by himself. You have to get input. You have to make this a collaborative effort, because I guarantee you, if he would have involved leaders in the African American community, leaders in the LGBTQ community, if he would have done that, they would have told him, listen here, Mr. Principal, don't go on the loudspeaker and say these terms that you're telling the students should never be said. Don't do that. Here's why you shouldn't do that. But he did not. So for that, he bears responsibility.